Hi guys, I want to talk about why I'm excited for Resident Evil 8. And I think I've talked about Resident Evil a couple of times, but the TLDR is I started with the Milla Jovovich films and I appreciated them for what they were at the time, but then I got into the games and I realised how much better the games are in terms of world building, logic and characters. I appreciate the films for getting me into the franchise, but if you compare and contrast the world building, the characters and the way that everything's structured, it just makes so much more sense in the games. Everything makes a lot more, it's coherent, the characters are more likeable, and I get what they were trying to do, but it's one of those franchises with each film it decreased in quality. But that being said, I'm talking about Resident Evil 8, and the reason why I'm so excited about Resident Evil 8. So one of the key things that I love about Resident Evil 4, which is often considered the greatest of the Resident Evils, not only because it pioneered the over-the-shoulder third-person perspective, is that it's kind of got a cheesy gothic aesthetic. And the way that I would define that cheesy gothic aesthetic is one of the great thematic things that is in every single Resident Evil is mythology hiding science. The idea that it's seemingly supernatural, but actually when you break it down to the bare bones, it's not magical, it is scientific. And the idea that something that could be perceived as otherworldly is actually domestic, and I think that's why Resident Evil has the title it does, because it is something that's homegrown, it's something that's, it's an evil that is incarnate in society, and that's why the Umbrella Corporation is such a powerful entity, because it has that sort of corrupted corporation type thing. Now with Resident Evil 4, they took a theme that was established in previous Resident Evil games and turned it up to 100. So the theme that was established is the gothic hiding the scientific. Now this is something that's become more and more common since the original Resident Evil game, but I'm going to flip the switch and turn back to a more traditional media. So what normally happens in a horror scenario, what commonly happens is that people go, oh no, it must be a virus, oh no, it must be understandable by science, and then lo and behold in the last act you find out it was a demon, or it was a ghost, or it was a witch, and people are like, oh no, I thought it was science. And Resident Evil flips that every single time. They take a classic gothic supernatural scenario and then they give it a scientific reason. Now it's crazy magic science, but it is science. So when you take the original first and second, or 0 and 1, so Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1, it is a classic haunted zombie manor. It is your quintessential kind of witch doctor gothic manor scenario, but underneath it all is the science. Resident Evil 2 and 3 slightly tinkered with it, slightly weaker, but still really awesome, which was you've got the police station, which has got gothic elements, and it's kind of like a classic haunted house, and you've got weird switches, and you've got all of that stuff. Underneath it, science. And Resident Evil 4 is where it really turned up to a knot, and also Code Veronica. So Code Veronica, you've got a haunted castle. But underneath it, guess what? Science. And it's such a theme that goes in and out, and it constantly is like, haha, but science. So with Resident Evil 4, they turned it up to 11. It was great because you have cults and churches and scepters and all of these kind of haunted village witchcraft, like mythological monsters, but it's not that. It's insects, it's Plagos, it's a parasite that controls your brain in the same way that The Last of Us has that sort of, I can't remember what the name of the actual creature is, flash up on screen maybe if I do editing, but it has that classic, actually no, it's something sentient. And then with Resident Evil 5, they also carry that reasoning through, where yet again, it's kind of the classic, the original meaning of zombie. The idea of a crowd of people being controlled and being forced to be servants to someone else, which is the original sort of African zombieism, which is I think why they set it in Africa. I think it's meant to be that if you look into the etymology of zombies, it's not the risen dead, it's kind of possessed or controlled individuals, kind of a voodoo type scenario. And I think that's why they brought it back to Africa. So they wanted to do this kind of magical, mythological thing, but actually it's a combination of the virus and the plagas. And it has the original progenitor virus, which I think is brilliant. But that being said, Resident Evil 6 is where it kind of just goes completely flat. It's considered one of the weakest ones, and I think part of that is it's a less isolated story. Each of the other stories going up to that point, it's an isolated story where you're following one or two characters, and they have to get out before the location that they're in is destroyed, and also there is the kind of existential fear that whatever is infecting this location and has completely and utterly crippled the population of whichever location they're in, has been completely and utterly destroyed, may get out and then destroy the world. When you get to Resident Evil 6, it's global, and you don't have the controlled empathy to be able to understand the moral implications of having a world that's that destroyed. I think you could do it in a modern video game. I think The Last of Us 2 will probably do that very well, but that's not what Resident Evil is based on, and it doesn't work when you take it internationally, globally. You need it in an isolated location so you can get to the end and know that there's hope for the survival of the rest of civilization. It's a corrupting element inside a specific thing. And also it's part of the reason why Resident Evil 5, the film, sucks. It sucks. Not only does the world is already completely destroyed, so what are you rooting for? Because all you have is Resident Evil, like Umbrella Corporation operatives who are evil, so evil that they're destroying the few members of the population left on Earth. And also you've got the Red Queen that is still experimenting with forming global population or like citywide populations of mind-controlled clones in order to destroy a simulated city in order to see how the virus works so that you can sell it to another side. Why would that still be running post-apocalyptic? Who knows? It's nutters. It's completely and utterly rubbish. And it makes no sense to sell something that aggressive on a international level, because then you destroy the whole population. If you sell it into an isolated population, then that's how the villainous attitude works. Regardless, tangent aside, this video is going to be very long, bear with me. Resident Evil 4, flipping fantastic at doing the gothic undertones with the science underneath. So not only do you have it for the actual virus, the actual cause of the zombies or the Las Plagas, you've got it for the whole undertone. So you have it for, like, my favourite example of this is the scanny eye. So the eye you get from the guy, the big cheese, who turns into the big scorpion creature. And you pick up his eye and you use that to get through a door. Now, I love the mythology of that, because traditionally it would be the mythology of an evil eye, or having a cursed third eye or something to get through a doorway. In order to break the code, or, you know, like, I just love the symbology of that, but it's a retinal scanner. Great. It feeds into that underlying tone, which I really, really love. Similarly, you've got all of the staffs and the cult leader and all of that stuff, and I love that. I really, truly love that. I think it's amazing. So when we get into Resident Evil 7, just gone, is they've got the Baker family. So that's again another classic horror trope. The cannibal family, the you know, that Texas Chainsaw Massacre scenario, the cabin in the woods, the classic horror supernatural meltdown. And you've also got like a creepy little girl, another classic horror trope. But underneath it, it's all about the fungus. It's about spores in your brain. And that's genius, and I love it. And the other gothic elements that come into it, the kind of the house in the woods that has the cryptographic nature of it, and I love that as a theme. So I really am looking forward to Resident Evil 8, which has gone, again, like Resident Evil 4, full gothic. They have got witches, they have got werewolves, they have got seemingly vampire themes, they've got a cathedral, they've got kind of people wearing like early 20th century dresses and outfits and old-fashioned shotguns, and I really truly believe that they are buying into this premise of gothic imagery and classic horror tropes, and I'll be really interested to see how they undermine it with something scientific. Now, I think the thing that they're going to do is, because Ethan has been infected with the mould previously, I think at least some of the horror elements are going to be psychological. They are going to be visions, dreams, disassociative things that are happening. I also think one of the elements that they shared in the trailer was a picture of like a fetus in a nest. And we're going from Resident Evil 7 that had the little evil spore girl. She was grown on a ship. She is a controlled clone child. And they had similar themes in Resident Evil Revelations 2, I think, where they had the little girl having her mind like absorbed by the evil lady. I'm not explaining this very well, but there we go. And so they've done a lot of things with children and child clones and kind of breeding creatures of that nature. And if they've done it once with Resident Evil 7, I think they're going to follow that theme through to Resident Evil 8, particularly as they've kept Ethan as their primary protagonist. So I really truly think there's going to be something to do with children, offspring and clone babies. Now what's interesting is in the trailer they show Chris shooting Ethan's wife, who in the previous one was heavily infected with the same spores as he was, and they are happily living together post being cured. Now I think the reason why she is killed, and it's probably going to happen in the first act, is because she was pregnant, and that's why Chris is coming in to eliminate her before the fetus can develop, because if she's pregnant and also being affected by the spores, then maybe that will lead into stuff in the future plotlines. I think that could be a big thing for me. Also, the smiley guy with the beard and the hat, serious. I didn't hear him talk, but I was getting serious merchant vibes. Like, hello stranger, got some nice stuff. And the gothic elements of the series definitely reminds me a lot of Resident Evil 4 and that gothic element, and I would love to see the merchant explained and to go into more detail, because he's one of the most lovable, bizarre characters that is never explained, and I think that would be really interesting to see how that's kind of explained and kind of understood. I think a lot of the stuff that they're going to work in is, like, if we're going to do werewolves, it's either going to be psychological, it's going to be like crazy visions because you've got that stuff in your brain, or it's going to be something explainable along the lines of other bloodborne diseases and variants. But I think it could also be, again, going back to the fetus, another child that they have grown in a lab which has infected things. And it's interesting that they showed that fetus as well, because it's a fetus that's also featured in Resident Evil 7 as part of the cure for the mold spores. So I think it all connects. I think Chris, I'm really interested to see how they play with that character, because he still doesn't really seem to fit with the Chris of Resident Evil 5. So whether or not he's manipulated a clone, whatever, it'll be really interesting to see whether or not Jill is relevant to this, because obviously Jill was had her brain washed in Resident Evil 5, so I don't know whether or not the similar thing has happened to Chris. I think the different Resident Evil elements, as in the Umbrella Corporation and how they feed into things, is going to be super duper interesting. I think it's a different breed of a different type of virus that has been grown in clone children, but was released into this environment a long time ago. I think probably around the time of RE4, the Umbrella Corporation did additional experiments in different areas using maybe Las Plagas, maybe a different variant on that, and doing clone experiments very early on, and then abandoned the projects. And the current civilization living in Resident Evil Village is the result of that experimentation. And I'm really excited to see how the themes of classic gothic horror go into the Resident Evil world again, because that was one of my favourite elements. I love the aesthetic of Resident Evil 4. I'm really excited to see classic European gothic storytelling be reassessed from a modern Resident Evil game. Will I play it? I don't know, I'm terrified and a big wimp, and I don't have the technology to play it unless I were to buy myself a big fancy console, but I'm really excited. and I hope that I get to see some really great walkthroughs, and maybe I'll get it at some point. But like, I love Resident Evil as a franchise, as an entity. I like how lovable the characters are. Like, Ada Wong is one of my favourite characters, if not my favourite character in video game history ever. I love it. I just love it. And I love how well the game logic works, despite every single game seemingly being an entirely different game. It still works as a whole story, which is a feat of magic. There we go. I'm not going to edit this. I think I actually explained myself pretty well. I don't know, did that make any sense? I have no idea. Anyway, thank you all for watching. It's a vlog, and I'll see you guys when I do.